Okay, so this week's tutorial is basically based on homework 11, right? The solution is already provided in the week 12 section. So um, there was another set of tutorials that were supposed to be conducted last week, but due to public holiday, it was skipped. So the course coordinator has actually said that we go along as it is. So the solution set was already provided, right? So I think if you have any queries regarding that, it was again mostly the theory part, and since it was already you guys have already studied about it for your short test too, right? Definitely you definitely did that for your short test too. So in that particular case, again, if you have any doubts or anything like that, you can definitely reach out to me, right? So let's start with this week's problem. There is a total of, I think, 8 problems in this week's tutorial. 8, 9, 10. Okay, 10 problems. Okay, let's quickly get going. Compare and comment on the HTML filter and a web proxy. So a HTML filter, what it basically does is, if you just go along this diagram, the HTML filter just basically goes and translates this the web content and passes it to the web proxy, and then that particular the web proxy again it deals with the mobile or the device that we are dealing with. So based on whatever device we have, it converts this HTML the HTML codes into binary WML, or I think wireless machine language or wireless markup language. I think WML. That's the meaning of WML, isn't it? I think so. Let me just look for that. Yeah, it's wireless markup language, right? So, and it says a HTML filter translates a HTML, right? HTML is the hypertext markup language content into WML content. It may or may not be collocated with the web proxy, right? The proxy converts the WML to a more compact form known as a binary WML and delivers it to the mobile user over a wireless network using a web protocol stack. So like I was saying, right? So what it does, HTML filter basically converts the HTML file into WML file, right? Okay, or the contents into a wireless markup language, right? So it basically acts as a language converter, and then that language is then passed through the web proxy, right? There could be a web proxy, there could not be. It can go through a web proxy. It can also not go through a web proxy. Depends, right? But initially, in the fundamental structure, it does go through the web proxy, and that web proxy then converts it to a more compact binary WML language, right? So that is the purpose of HTML filter, right? The HTML filter basically converts it, and then that's the function of the HTML filter. It converts HTML language to WML content, right? And a web proxy is basically a web proxy basically converts whatever WML language we have into a more compact binary form, right? And then B says discuss the functional areas supported by WML. So again, WML is wireless markup language again, right? So it basically supports deck structure, content, formatting, user input, variables, timers, tasks, task or event bindings, right? So it depends on your mobile device, right? So it basically converts the content in such a manner that it can be visual for you, right, on your mobile devices. So it basically reads the screen resolution as well, right? So at times you might have seen that the website structure on your normal computer desktop is different compared to the structure in your mobile phone, right? So basically a WML supports all those stuff, right? So it creates the deck structure, the content, the formatting of the web page, and the user input, right, where to input the variables and all these variables that are given over here. Then see when would each of the when would each of the 3 WPP transaction classes be used? So WTP is wireless transfer protocol, right? So there's 3 classes to a WTP transaction. One is the class 0. So class 0 basically provides an unreliable datagram service, which can be used for a unreliable push operation. Class 1, then there is a class 1 WTP transaction that provides a reliable datagram service, which can be used for a much more reliable push operation. Then we have the class 2 that provides a request or response transaction service and supports the execution of multiple transactions during one WSP session, right? So WSP is wireless security protocol, right? So there's a meaning of WSP. So keep that in mind.
Yes, sir.
Let's sorry, it's not wireless. It is wireless session protocol. Sorry, it's not security, right? WSP is wireless session protocol, right? When we are dealing with sessions, WSP is associated with. What services are provided by WSP? Again, the services provided when you look back to a particular web session, like you reflect about like what if you start browsing on your phone, what all comes to your mind, right? So the first thing that comes in your mind is the text and images that comes along. So text and image, that is what you see, right? So it supports text and image. And then the formatting and layout of commands provided for text and limited image capability. So basically the WSP session also looks at the formatting of the web page as well. The deck card organizational metaphor. WML documents are subdivided into small, well-defined units of user interaction called cards. Users navigate by moving back and forth between the cards. A card specifies one or more units of interaction, right? A menu, a screen of text, or a text entry field. A WML, a wireless markup language deck is similar to an HTML page in that it is identified by a web address and is a unit of content transmission. Support for navigation among cards and decks. WML includes provisions for event handling, which is used for navigation or executing scripts, right? So, like I said, what you want to do is whenever you come across the term WSP, the first thing that should come into your mind is the device, right? When we are talking about device, I mean, like our desktops already support HTML files, but think about the other devices that you are using, like mobile phones, the tablets that we are using. Then there's uh, different other devices, right? That we have that through which we can interact with the web. So what happens is whenever we have WSP or when we are talking about the wireless session protocol, um, the first thing that should come into and just think about a web page when you open a web page in your web browser, right? So think about all the facilities or the options that you have, right? When you open a mobile browser, you have the option of using the navigation pane, right, or multiple tabs. So that is known as cards, right? And you can move back and forth between the pages. Then we have the text, image, and formatting on all the other features that are listed over here. List and briefly define the security services provided by wireless. Oh, sorry. It's known as, let me just quickly check. WT. It is the wireless transport layer security, right? WTLS is the wireless transport layer security, right? So it is data integrity, ensures the data is sent between the client and the gateway is not modified, right? Using the message authentication, the privacy. The other feature is privacy, right? It uses encryption to ensure that the third party cannot read the data. Authentication establishes the authentication of two parties using the digital certificates. Denial of service protection detects and rejects messages that are replayed or not successfully verified. So whenever we are talking about WTLS, we are talking about security layer, right? So whenever we talk about security layers, you can just think about the logging functionality that is provided um, for any of your accounts, right? You can think about that, but it is generally the security part. So data is integrate. I mean, the data integrity is one of the important factors. Then why are we using this security layer? It is for privacy, right? Isn't it? So privacy, just for privacy, we have to put the security layer. And then what does it, whenever where we are entering the password, what does it do? It authenticates, it tells whether we are the right person who is trying to log in or not, right? And then if we are not the right person, it will not authenticate, and then the denial of service protection will come into place, right? So basically it deals with the security part, right? So these are the features of the WTLS, right? Problem 2, describe the variability in mobile environment. So variability in mobile environment, it is telling us talking about the variables that are variable in the mobile environment, right? So there's 3 variables that are variable. I mean, you can vary these variables, right? So the first one in the mobile environment is the mobile device capability, right? So it can support various, like when we are talking about the compatibility or capability, sorry, the mobile device capability, there's various, like each machine could have different capabilities, right? So this is one of the variable factor in the mobile environment. So when we talk about mobile device capability, it basically deals with the form factor, the GUI, right? That is the general user interface, right? The graphical user interface, right? GUI. The multimedia, the types of multimedia it can support, the real-time multimedia, right? So all these are variables, right? This can vary. Then the other factor is the mobility, right? So whether the mobile device is stationary or it is moving, or it is right, no, mobile, whether it is on roaming, right? So when we're talking about the mobile environment, mobility is another factor when we are dealing with mobile devices, right? So mobile devices, the mobility, the component is the mobility that is variable. And the next one is the connectivity, right? When we're dealing with connectivity, whether it's connected, whether the connection is poor, whether the connection is like semi-connected, or whether it disconnects, right? So these are the variable factors in the mobile environment. Then talking about problem 3, describe the web architecture or wireless architecture protocol. So when we talk about wireless architecture protocol, we are basically dealing with 3 layers, right? Sorry, wireless application protocol. Sorry about that, right? I mean, I keep forgetting that. Web is the wireless application protocols. So wireless application protocol architecture, when we talk about wireless application architecture, there's a client, right? You are the client. When you are using the device, you are the client. Then we have the web gateway through which we access access the materials from the web server, right? So it is through the web gateway, right? Web gateway is basically connecting us to the web server. So when we are talking about in general, when you come to talk about the web pages, the web gateway at times, let's say Google might, like Google points us to the web server where the contents are, right? What we are looking for at times, or the browser usually acts as a gateway point, right? So web gateway is the point that points to the location of the web server, right, where the materials are stored. And then we have the web server. So 3 components, that is the client. The clients are us, right, who use the device. These 3 layers, 3 components to it: client, the web gateway, and the web server. So the gateway is basically going to open the gate to that particular web server only, right? So basically points to that particular web server. The client is the people that we are, right, who are using this. So the client and the web gateway has, uses this sort of, these protocols, that the WTP, the wireless transfer protocol, right? And then it also uses the WSP, that is the wireless WSP is wireless session protocol, right? And then these 2 are connected through the HTTP or the hypertext transfer protocol, right? So the web pages are basically transferred to this particular HTTP protocol. And another way to simply understand this is in this particular form, right? We have the web server, it goes through a web proxy, and then web proxy sends us the details to our mobile devices. When you are using the mobile devices to connect to a web page, let's say if you want to connect to Facebook, right? So there's a Facebook web server, definitely, right? And then it goes through a web proxy, right? Web proxy basically points to that particular location. Like no, there won't be anything like without knowing where that Facebook server is, we cannot access it, right? So there has to be something. There has to be a web proxy that basically stores all the addresses of those web servers and points towards it. So there's a web server. The contents are stored on the web server. The web proxy basically points towards which web server the contents are, and then that web through that particular web proxy, the content is basically delivered to our devices or from our devices to the web server. It helps to communicate, right? And then we have the WTA, that is the wireless. It is the wireless, I think, telephone. I think it's a wireless telephony application, right? So in this particular case, this is where the calls and all is handled by this WTA server, right? So web contents are basically controlled through this particular line, and then the calls and the text, that is basically the network provider services are connected through the WTA server. Then we have problem number 4, again, describe the web network elements. So there's two sets of elements, that is, one is the fixed network, and then there's the wireless network. The fixed network is up till the web proxy, right? While the wireless network is where the connections are made through wireless mediums. So our devices connecting to the web proxy is basically wireless. Same goes over here. Whether it goes through the web proxy or it doesn't go through the web proxy, basically it will the connection between the device and the web proxy, I mean, with whatever we have in the middle is wireless, right? Same goes with the telecommunication service as well. So the connection is wireless in this particular case. However, the connections over here, the internet together with the filter, and then we have the web proxy, all are a fixed network, right? This does not change. The devices can change over here, but these contents and stuff are fixed, right, over here. Then we have describe the WAP protocol stack, right? So when you talk about the WAP protocol stack, it is a wireless application environment. This is where we are interacting with the uh, web content, right? Wireless applications through which we communicate, and then there is a session layer, right? When we interact, when we open the browser, the wireless application environment is where we basically open the web browser or the applications that we use to communicate to the internet, right? And then when we start this particular apps to connect to the internet or the contents of a particular server, we are basically running a session layer. So a session is basically starting, right? When you start your web, I mean, let's say a browser even, you are basically starting a internet session, right? So that is where the wireless session protocol comes in, right? And then once you start with this wireless session protocol, right? Once the session has started, then there will be some sort of transaction that will be happening, right? You want to put in some text in, let's say in Google. So when you start to type into that particular Google, I mean, let's say you are using Google and you try to search something, you are basically initiating the transaction protocol. So once you once you are ready to send something, right? Once you have typed your text and everything, right? You're trying to make the transaction. You are trying to look up for a result. So that is called a transaction, right? So once you are ready with the transaction, the wireless transaction protocol comes into place, and then that whatever you are sending, how secure it is, right? That is actually checked through. It goes through the wireless transport layer security, right? If you are searching something, I mean, um, the wireless transport layer security might at times, let's say, if you're not talking about Google, right? If you're talking about, let's say, for your email devices, I mean, like for email services, right? In such cases, what happens? They will not let you in. They will not allow certain searches, right? It can be applied to Google as well, right? Google might block certain terms that you cannot search for. So if you go against their policy, if you try to make a transaction or you try to make a search that is not supported by Google, this wireless transport layer security, right? There's some security features inbuilt into that particular case, so it will stop you, right? If everything is fine, then it will go through the wireless datagram protocol where the data transfer will take place, right? So this is from start till the end process. So you start from the wireless application environment. You create a session, right? Once you have created a session, let's just talk about Facebook, right? You open your browser. So this is where you are at the application environment. Once you open the browser, simultaneously, your wireless session starts, right? Once your wireless session starts, you search something, or you try to log in, or you try to navigate to that login page. So you're basically making transactions over there in that particular case, and then you try to log in. That is where the security layer comes in. Once you logged in, you can transfer or you can move the data here and there, right, from your end. So these are the transfer protocols that are listed over here. So the wireless application environment is basically used, it is the architecture where application model, browser, gateway, server, all those are used, right? WML language, the XML syntax based on cards, stack cards, variables, right? WTA services, telephone services such as call, control, phone book. So in this WAE layer, in short terms, just application word basically relates to all the applications that you have on your devices through which we access the internet. Then we have the WSP, the wireless session protocol. It provides the HTTP 1.1 functionality, supports session management and security, right? Then we have the WTP, where wireless transaction protocol provides reliable message transfer. Like I said, transaction refers to transfer protocol, right? We are making some sort of transaction or transfer. And then there's a WTLS, that is the wireless transport layer security, provides data integrity, privacy, authentication functions, and based on so forth, right? So it is the security layer. And then the datagram protocol that provides transport layer functions based on IDS from UDP. Okay, so the same goes over here. The same diagram is over here, right? The same diagram is made over here. Problem number 6, describe the wireless, wireless application environment logical model. So what does the wireless application environment or the logical model does? So there's an original server, right? Then there's a gateway, and then we are the clients. So we clients, we try to access the web content. So it will allow us, right? The web browsers or the applications that we have, it helps us basically to connect or to access information from the original server. So there's three components. The origin server, right, where all the information, right? Let's just take an example. Let's say Gmail, right? You are using Gmail, so all your emails are basically stored in the original server. You need to access this server, so you'll pass through a gateway, the address that you are using through which we are going to access this information, right? And we are the end people that we are actually seeing all this the resources or through which we are basically accessing, right? So there's three components, that is the origin server, the gateway, and the client. Then we have problem number 7. It says to describe the wireless markup language. So basically the wireless markup language that has already been defined, like I said earlier on. So I will not go over it again, right? When we're dealing with wireless markup language, it basically does. I'll just go briefly over it. Tag-based browsing language, right? It does what it does is it does the screen management, right? The text and the image based for your mobile phones, right? That language basically translates what sort of information, how the information is going to be displayed on your phone. The data input lines, the hyperlinks, and the navigation support takes into account limited display navigation capabilities of the device, right? So each and every phone size might differ. So one might have let's say the latest Samsung S21, or S21, and then we have iPhone. The aspect ratios of the screens are different, so the presentation of data might vary, right? It's not for sure it will remain same, it will vary. Then we have the tablets as well. So if you compare the content on a tablet compared to a mobile phone, the contents will be different. So this is it basically helps to navigate all this, right? So this language helps to translate or manage this screen, right? How the information is displayed takes into account limited display. Okay, and then we have the XML based language where it describes only intent of interaction in an abstract manner. Presentation depends upon the device capabilities. And then it also offers cards and text, like multiple tab options and all those stuff. Then we have problem number 8. In problem number 8, again, describe the wireless telephone architecture, right? Again, like any other thing, right? Compared to this particular model over here, it is the same kind of model. We have the WTA origin server. This is, let's say we have a Vodafone service. So we have the Vodafone server, right? Where all the data is stored, right? If we have to text something, it goes through a server, isn't it? So it goes through the, I mean, if you are using a Vodafone network, it will go through the Vodafone server. So our mobile network provider acts as the, I mean, like the cell towers and all those information basically helps transfer the call information, the text information from us, right? The client, it passes through the web gateway that encodes and decodes all the information, right? And then it passes to the Vodafone network, let's say if we are using that. So there's 3 components to it. Again, it has a server, it has a gateway, and it has a client. So client, it's us, the server, where the information is stored, and then there's a gateway that to which we have to access the information. It basically tells you, okay, no, the information is provided at this particular server or at this particular location in the web origin, right? And then give an example of WTA or voicemail. So how does a WTA voicemail work, right? Again, it has the same operation like I was showing over here, like I was telling you, whatever information we have, we pass it through the gateway, and that gateway then directs us to the original server, right? And then the information travels back and forth. Same way it goes through this particular case as well. So let's say you get an incoming call, right? So you receive a call, it goes through in mobile network, it goes through your Vodafone network or something, right? And it goes through to the, I mean, that call comes through the Vodafone network, right? The towers that we have. It goes through that particular towers, it connects it to the Vodafone server. Let's say we are using Vodafone network, right? That call goes through the Vodafone server, and then that server passes the information, like, no, it tells us, okay, you have a call. So it generates that new DAC, right? That information and sends it to our phone. That particular information is displayed on our phone at this particular point, right? So the information is then passed on to the client, that is us, right? An incoming call comes through the mobile network, comes through the Vodafone server, and then the server passes that information to us, that is the client. And then once we have that, that call come in, the incoming logo that comes in front, right? So based on that, we tell them whether to accept the call, whether not to accept the call, right? Depends. So wait for the call, right? So that information goes back, wait for the call, and then that is sent back to the or translated to the WTA, right, server. Like, no, at this particular point, the information, the call is coming on your phone, right? You haven't answered it, so it will generate a wait for call option, wait for call command, and then it will send that back to the server, and that information is again sent back to the voicemail server, and then the voicemail server again sets up the call, it sends that back, we have to accept the call. If we accept the call, it goes through the same process again, right? It goes through the WTA server, it goes through the mobile network and tells the person who is trying to call you or the voice message that is incoming, okay, right, you are all set to go, like, no, you can now communicate. So then the information starts to travel back and forth from the client to the person who is trying to communicate with you, right? So that's the case over here, right? Then we have problem number 10. It is to compare and comment on the web wireless and the web push services. So web push is basically scheduled pull by the client, right? Example, active channels, no real-time alerting or response, example, stock codes, right? So web push is basically whatever we receive from the website, right? It is basically pushed through the web. And then we have the wireless push, right? These are the notifications or services that are provided through the network provider, right? So it is accomplished by using the network itself, example, the SMS. Limited to simple text cannot be used as a starting point for service, right? If SMS contains news, user cannot request service specific news item. Web push is again, web push is where the network supported push of WML content, example, alerts or service indications, pre-caching of data and channel resources. So that's regarding the three components over here. What is web push, wireless push, and the web push? So in simple terms, web push is whenever you when you open a web browser, a page tries to send you a notification. So that notification, whatever you display through the page or the content, it is known as the web push, right? No real-time alerts are given. When you open the page, you get the information, right? Otherwise, there's no real-time information. Then we have the wireless push, where it does not support any other content. It just basically supports simple text, such as SMS, right? That is known as the wireless push. And then we have the web push that basically does support the multimedia, right? Or the MMS that we used to use all this in the other time. What is a web push framework, right? So web push framework is basically like this. So again, we have the client, we have the gateway, we have the server. So information from the phone, whoever is using the information tries to access some sort of information, right? It will go through the gateway. The gateway say, okay, right, you're fine to go through this particular gate to access the information in this particular server. And it will authenticate everything. And then the information is passed on to the server. The server receives your request and then sends the information back to our to the web proxy or the gateway, and then that information is displayed onto our phone. The web server, right? There's a web server as well. So in this particular case, if you are not directly connecting to the web server, if you're directly using if you're directly connecting to the web or the wireless wireless application protocol or the wireless application server, right? If you're directly connecting it to that, there's no need for a proxy, right? Like in the case of an MMS. So the service provider will basically have the server through which we are accessing our MMS, right? If the MMS is based on the web server, it will go through a web proxy, right? If it's not located on the internet, if it's directly located on the web server, it will directly access the information from the web server. So with that, we come to a conclusion of today's tutorial. Right? So if you have any queries, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we'll complete the class over here. So remember, this week's class is basically, whatever we have is basically all theory based, right? Some of the diagrams you have to know very well, right? So some of the diagrams in this week's tutorial has been repeated. Otherwise, the information are pretty much similar. So there's only three components to any sort of information. We have the client, we have the proxy or the gateway through which we access the information from the server, right? So yeah. So with that, okay. So do you guys have any question? Okay, so you guys don't have any questions, so we'll end the class over here, right? So thank you for joining in, and I'll see you next week.